knowing what we want in a partner, then looking at the facial features, be able to realise and find that partner very quickly. Then how to maintain that relationship with that partner into the future. And if we're doing all of that, we're happy in what we're doing, we're doing the job we love to do, we're more productive, the company's making more money, we're going home happy, we're not fighting with our spouse, we're not arguing with the kids. So we reduce bullying in the workplace, we reduce domestic violence without even focusing on reducing those. We just improve the quality of life and the connections that we have in the communication.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good day. This is the Connect Unplugged Podcast, number 46. And today our guest is joining us from Australia, from Newcastle, and it is Alan Stevens, a communication expert and facial recognition profiling expert. Welcome to the podcast, and I'll let Cal give the more extended bio of you.
Thanks, Connor. Today on Unplugged, we're joined by a truly fascinating guest, Alan Stevens. Alan is an international profiling communication expert and the creator of the Rapid Trait Profiling System, a unique method that helps people quickly and accurately read others to build instant trust and connection. He's worked with global brands and organizations like Gillette, the Australian Federal Police, and DC Films, bringing his behavioral insights to leaders, creatives, and teams who want to improve communication performance and influence. But beyond the corporate world, Alan's true passion lies in working with children and school teachers. He's deeply committed to helping young people and educators develop emotional intelligence and stronger relationships in the classroom where connection can change lives. Whether it's improving sales, deepening relationships, or understanding what someone's not saying out loud, Alan's work is practical, powerful, and deeply human. So if you've ever wanted to know what someone is thinking just by looking at their face, this is the episode you've been waiting for. Alan, great to have you here. I was almost going to attend this podcast today with my screen off, so I wasn't giving anything away. This is such a unique field that you found yourself in. I'm really deeply curious to find out how you began this journey and where it all started for you.
Well, thanks very much. But first of all, and that if you had come on without your camera on, I would have got your Facebook profile or whatever on another screen, see your face there, and I would have had your personality anyway. So there's no hiding.
I don't think there's any hiding with my face anyway, mate.
Well, I got into this field mainly because I was very poor at reading people. I'd been through 2 divorces. I'd had a lot of broken relationships. I'd even had a couple of business partners who went to the bank out, people I trusted, but didn't know what their true nature was until it got to the crunch. But and that's where I just realized that I needed better ways of reading people. And what I've learned, the beautiful part of it is anybody can learn it. It's nothing magical. It's not that I'm clairvoyant or overly intuitive or anything else. It's just that the face tells me everything that I need to know about somebody.
So you had a few hurdles leading up to getting into this field, a few life, I guess, experiences that transitioned you or changed your trajectory into this field. What were you? Where were you growing up? Did you always want to be a communication expert? Can you share a little bit about what I guess led you to that trajectory change?
Well, my life has pretty been much. No matter what I've planned, things have happened that have taken me into the direction that I've actually gone. When I was in year 10, I realized, year 11 and 12 at school was just not going to be for me. My vocational guidance counselor and teachers said, Owen, you haven't really got the brains to go on and continue with your education, definitely not going to university. You'd be better off becoming a carpenter because you're good with your hands. And that's what I ended up doing. I applied for work with Chiswell's Furniture, but then found out it wasn't a cabinet maker's job. It was a factory job. And so production line. So I decided, well, I'll have to go back to year 11. I can't think of what else to do. I'd previously applied to the Postmaster General's Department, which for those that don't know it, it was the combination of the Australian Post Office and what is now Telstra, all in one organisation. And I applied for I applied for the entrance exam. They told me that I'd failed because they were taking in 750 people and I came in about 940 something. And that was a bit of an insult because that wasn't so much an intelligence thing around the knowledge and stuff I knew. It was an IQ test. And they told me I failed. Well, anyway, I decided to go back to school, but then I got a consolation prize from them saying that they'd have that many dropouts, so now take me. And
Had you gone back to school, or you were?
yep, I was just about to start back into school, and the day that before that I was supposed to go in to start back at school, I got a letter from them saying, "We'll now take you." And I started with them in the February that year, so I had a couple more weeks off, and then I started work with them. But I took on a role where there was a job in Newcastle that was applied, and it was only going to be a temporary job for 5 months. And nobody else wanted it. They thought it was a dead-end job. I ended up taking it on, and through some chance situations, we went from just what they used to call telegraphs, where we used to do telegrams and things like that, and what we call the telex exchange, where you communicate by keyboard, not by voice. And it went into the computer section.
Okay.
So we're now looking after all the computer modems that connected all the businesses, police, what do you call it, finance organisations, banks and all the rest of it around Australia. And within the first 10 years, I became the youngest supervising technician in Australia. So, and I thought, this is my career for the rest of my life, because I was told, get a job with the government, you'll build up your superannuation, and then when you retire, you can live on the superannuation. But that wasn't the case.
Okay. Was that because you had bigger dreams for yourself, or you fell out of love with what you were doing? You got bored?
They went. So the day I came to Newcastle, they went from the Postmaster General's department to telecom, and then back in, I think it was Christmas '91, they became Telstra, and that was the day that I left them, because the way things were changing, there was less leadership. It was more about KPIs. It was the pressure to get jobs done in a certain time. And the focus went off with, I was all about helping people. And I loved the work I was doing. But when they changed, I thought, this is not for me anymore. I need to go. And it was around about the time I went through my first divorce. And so that was there was a whole lot of things that were happening at the one time. So no matter what plans I had, they all went out the window.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, Connor and I have, it's like a common thread that we've been having in our conversations recently with our guests, that there seems to be these like peak states that happen in people's life where a crisis happens, and that almost pushes them into living more alignment with what they want to achieve in their life. And that sounds like it's happening to you. So what happened next?
Well, when I left them, I started working in a whole bunch of different organisations. I've worked in the fuel industry, the building industry. I've worked in the catering area as well, and just trying all different things. But there's been a common thread in everything that I've done. It's always been around working with people. You know, when I was growing up, my whole life was trying to create relationships. My father died when I was 3, and I grew up with my mother and sister, never really fitted in anywhere. So all those, first 50 years of my life was chasing relationships. And it was just before I turned 50, I'd remarried, and that marriage didn't last very long either. And at that point, I realized that things had to change. I had to build better relationships. There was a company that had brought me in. They were currency traders. They taught people how to trade currency, and none of their students were making any money, but they had a brilliant instructor. He was an extremely well-qualified trader, making very good money himself, and a brilliant instructor in the process. But people were still losing money when they went live. And back in those days, I was working with Myers-Briggs and disc profiling, so we used that. But we found that when people went live, they didn't match their personalities. And we realized that some of them didn't answer it truthfully. They answered in the way that they thought, well, what sort of personality do I have to be a good trader? And that's the way they answered it.
Aspirationally, they answered it aspirationally. We found that a lot with some of the profiling tools that we used to use when we used to focus on therapy and coaching. And people would answer those profiling tests more from an aspirational factor rather than as they are right now.
So that's it. And that was like when I first did my first Myers-Briggs assessment, I came out as an ESTJ, extroverted sensing, thinking and judging, which is a military organization. It's telecom, it's all those large corporates. But when I did the test many years later after I'd left them, and I was actually said to me, answer it as if it was you were able to do it the way you wanted to do it. You weren't pressured by anybody else. And I came out as an INFP. So introverted, intuitive, feeling and perception. So completely the opposite on every dichotomy.
You couldn't.
And I realized that there need to be better ways of doing this. And I was helping another friend run a spiritual retreat. We're doing a little workshop using Myers-Briggs as the basis of it, getting people on one side of the room, extroverts one side, introverts on the other side. Here's a scenario. How would you all behave? And we'd then bring them through the other dichotomies. And the gentleman just said to me, "You ever looked at reading faces?" Now, it was an hour and a half drive away from the retreat where I was at, back to my home. And I thought about it all the way home. Now, my philosophy of life has always been the most important thing you'll learn is the next thing you learn after you think you know everything.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
nice. I like
as
that.
soon as I got home, onto Google and did some searching, and I found Paul Ekman, who is a psychologist and professor over in California, who did all the research on the micro expressions, little twitches on the face that give away your personality. And I also found a lady by the name of Naomi Chickle, an English lady, also living in California, who worked with the facial features. And so I started training with both their groups. And as I was going through the training, I thought these two should be working together because the facial features tell me your personality. Then when I'm talking to you, the feedback from the facial expressions and the body language tell me whether I've read you right. Is there something emotionally going on? And are you telling the truth? But with the psychologists, they got caught up on the old thing called phrenology, which were bumps on the head. It was all about your character. If you had certain bumps, you could be a serial killer, that sort of thing, which has been debunked. Because as I often say to people, if I was working under my car, I'd always come out with an extra bump on my head. And it didn't mean I turned into a serial killer. I was pretty angry at the car and angry at myself, but I hadn't really murdered anybody. So I believe that was all rubbish. But the face is talking about your personality. Not how you're thinking about, what you're thinking about, but how you're thinking about things. How do you process that information? And with that, because there's no questions needed to be asked, if I've got your photograph, I've got your personality. And if I've got your earlier photograph, I've got a pretty good idea of what sort of life you've led as well. Because of the change in the facial features. And just for quickly on the way the facial features work, everything that you feel inside, we express outwardly. Our brain is controlling our muscle movements. So when you think and concentrate, you're going to pull the same expression over and over, working the same muscles and creating ridges and crevices that then become a history of how you like to think and process. So your face becomes a roadmap. And so that was one of the first areas I thought was more powerful than any of the other skills in those four, because it's the facial features, getting the language right. So once I know where I am on the world scale, I know where you are on the world scale, I know how to then change the way I like to be spoken to match the way you need to be spoken to. Then I've got the feedback from the body language and expressions that tell me, did I read you right? Was there something emotionally going on? And are you telling the truth? But on that last bit, not using it as a lie detector, using it as a truth seeker. Because if something's going on, I want to know what it is, especially if I'm doing a presentation to you and I know that something's going there, then I know that you're not fully engaged in what I'm talking about. So to keep talking is a waste of time. But if I can keep the conversation going, but take it into an area where you can start opening up with me, then I may be able to help you through that. Now you know that I'm really focused on you. I haven't just been focused on myself in the sale. And they can trust me. And so then if we don't have time to finish the presentation, we'll put it on hold for another time. But people usually chase me up then to go, well, we didn't finish our conversation. Will you tell me more? And so it's in building that trust and doing it in a genuine way so that people really know that you're focused on them and not just your back pocket.
When you second divorce, around the 50 mark, you wanted to read people better so you wouldn't end up in a similar situation, I guess, for lack of better words. What was your outcome? I mean, I understand. So were you looking for another career, or were you just looking, is this your own personal development, professional development? And I wanted to find another life partner, and therefore I wanted to be able to read people better. So I found a partner that married up with who I was, or my characters, or my traits, or my qualities.
Well, after 2 divorces, a lot of broken relationships, I realized that I really need to work on me first of all, because the last thing I want to do is to go through that cycle again. How many times do we do things and we go, oh, why did I do that again? And I think it was Rod Stewart who had said when they asked him if he would marry a third time. And he said, no, he'd just find a woman he doesn't like and buy her a house. Get it over and done with. And I was pretty much of the same mindset. I thought, right, if I'm attracting all these women who aren't the best relationship for me, what is it about me that's doing it?
Yeah.
So I needed to work that out first of all. So I didn't attract the same type of people. And that's when it all really went down that track. But it was mainly, I was working with, a second wife had taught me into becoming a massage therapist. She used to teach aromatherapy. And when we split up, I just put that on hold. And a couple of mates taught me into getting my table out and giving them massages. And we're at a retreat. And when you've got engineering types coming to you and asking you where the extra hands come from, how did the table move? And they're genuinely asking, this is what I felt. That to me was quite bizarre because I was a remedial masseuse.
Yeah.
But this was something more down a bit of a spiritual line that I hadn't even touched on before. And about that time, as a major event in my life, I met an Aboriginal group because I thought, right, nobody in Western society in the modern day really had answers to what were happening. So I thought, go to the oldest living culture on the planet and ask them. Well, after going out bush for a year, I found that with that, I understood their culture, etc. They were talking about the healing because what actually happened after the mates did that I did the massages for them. They taught me into opening my rooms up again, and I started attracting women who had been sexually abused, who were coming back to me time and time again to be massaged, a male. At the same time, I was working with terminally ill patients that were being sent to me from a health store in Newcastle called Visionary Health, and some of them were reversing their conditions. Totally bizarre to me. And that's why I then looked around to find some answers. I met this Aboriginal group. That led on to going out every weekend for over a year, understanding their culture, talking about what was happening in the healing and why has my massage changed and why are people getting these results. And that led on to then going through an initiation. So from my boyhood into manhood. And that's when I really started looking at, well, how do we bring our relationships together? And so now, that was over 20 years ago now, because I'm in my 70s. And it came down to how do we bring more boys through their rites of passage? That took me down that line as well. That's where the education side of things have come in.
This is a passion of yours now.
Yeah.
This is really interesting to me because I went to an all boys Catholic school, and in grade 9 they had a grade 9 camp, and it was very much a military style camp where they took us through a lot of different challenges and basically, had us in the middle of nowhere and marched us around a couple of different mountains with very little supplies with us. It was basically a survival camp, but I look back on that now and it was very intentional what they did. It was designed to help us to start that process of becoming a man and standing on your own 2 feet and learning, how you can use your own skill sets to navigate or to, find bush tucker and things like that. Can you tell us a little bit of the thinking and the framework behind why that's so important and how it's showing up as a problem in today's society? Because I am fascinated by this whole idea of someone becoming a man and living their manhood.
Yeah, when it comes down to it is that if we look at society today, about roughly half marriages break up. In a lot of cases, the man is not involved in his son's life. In a lot of cases, doesn't get the opportunity to. And the end result is, well, the stats today are showing that 80% of the most horrific crimes against women that are perpetrated by males are perpetrated by males who didn't have a father. And so that rite of passage is so important. And it's, the process you would have gone through in that military situation, the same thing that goes on with the indigenous societies around the world. It's all about that. Well, the 3 pillars for the Aboriginal society is all about love, humility, and respect. And teaching boys and that to love women, to love mother. Well, Mother Earth first of all. And the way I looked at that was, well, women were mothers, and any woman can become a mother, and they all deserve to be treated with the right respect, because you're not going to get a good partner unless you know how to treat your partner well. And so that was important, but it was guiding the boys to realize that they have a responsibility. We go through boys go through 4 different 7-year cycles to get to a man, whereas girls go through 3 7-year cycles to become a mother and a woman. First 7 years with both boys and girls, they're with their mothers. Then in tribal situations, the second 7 years for the girls, they go off to the other women. Now with the boys, they would then go to granddad and father for the next 7 years. So by the time they're 14, they were then prepared so they could then go to their rite of passage and where they would meet the other men. Because it wasn't dad's job or granddad's job to turn their son into a man. Their job was to guide him, getting him ready for that. Because, well, if we look at George Bush Jr. and Sr. in America, they're identical. And if you look at them, they look the same. What they've done in their careers, identical. So, well, the son had to take the world to war in a bigger way than his father to get out of his shadow. Whereas if you've got other men around you, the boy will take a little bit from all of them and create his own identity, which makes him unique in what he's created compared to everybody else. So he has value at that point. And that's what happens at the age of 14. The boys would go into that rite of passage. And for the next 7 years, they'd be learning from the other men. So by the time they were 21 and they've impregnated their partner, who has now gone through her 3rd stage, which is working with the wise women of the tribe to know how to become a mother and everything else, the father then would go, in the next 7 years, would go off to the wise men. So he would then realize what he needed to know by the time he was 28 to be able to take his 7-year-old son on and take his son into the next stage. So this is why boys have always grown slower than girls. They have to. But we put them in school and we expect them to grow at the same rate. And because we do that, and boys really need to be running around in the paddock, that's how we learn, experiential learning and we call it problem-based learning.
Yeah.
Girls are designed for schools, but boys aren't. And let's face it, the Rockefellers, when they first started education all those centuries ago, it was all about getting people prepared, ready to work in the factories. It was not about creating thinkers. It was about creating workers. And we're still doing the same thing today. We've got these children who are all born geniuses. Look at any child. They're all bulletproof. They've all got no limitations to their imaginations. And we send them off to school and we take all these little colored boxes and we turn them all into brown boxes. And at the end of the school, we've educated the genius out of them. Then we send them out to the workforce and one of the bosses asking for, where's your genius? Well, we're sorry, we've taken that out of them.
Yeah.
And so this is why things need to change.
So, wow, you unpacked so much there. There's probably so many angles we could go down. So with the work you do now, I mean, in the intro that Cal mentioned, there were some high profile organizations that you had worked with. How does, after a year out in the bush and learning all of this, how did you then transition into, I'm now working with some of the biggest household names within certain industries?
Well, the beautiful part of it is it all blends together. If we talk about the material world and the spiritual world, you can't have one without the other. It's the same as you've got a box. You can't have an outside without an inside or an upside without a downside. And so everything's connected. That's what I realized. And I thought, rightio, what we were missing in going more into the information age was this loss of connection that we had. And that's what I got from the Aboriginal side. But it was also, I've worked with men's groups, even with Freemasonry, where Freemasonry is all about helping good men to become better men. It's all about humility. It's all about what we call a charity. It's about helping men to become better. So on one side, I'm helping boys to come into manhood and then helping them become better men. It's a process all the way through. So everything's connected. But while I was working with going out and learning culture with the Aboriginals, I was also working my own job as well. And all the way through, I keep seeing connections between my material world and the spiritual world and how I could work those together. And that's why my massage was so powerful. I lost all the strength that I had because of arthritis, etc., in the hands. So I wasn't massaging with the intensity I used to massage, but I had people telling me about out-of-body experiences, opening up and sharing their lives, because I take them through an NLP process, first of all, discuss all of that, put them on a table, use aromatherapies and massage and color and sound and everything else to anchor them in what we've been talking about. So instead of going to a therapist and then walking out the door and being smacked in the face by the real world and go, what was therapy all about? They're on a table for an hour going through all of that. So really anchoring it. And that's what was having an impact with them. So we're taking the world around them and embedding that into their the way they were living their lives. So it's bringing their spiritual and their material world together as well.
This is all going in a different direction than I expected, but I'm loving it because, a lot of what we do touches on how business and spirituality is connected. I am curious, you opened up a little bit of an open loop and didn't quite land where I thought you were going to. When you were seeking those answers in the Aboriginal communities and learning the Aboriginal culture, and you said that the motivation for that was because you were having these experiences while you're massaging. You just mentioned out of body experiences. You mentioned that people felt like there was more hands or more pressure than, thought possible. There was, healings that were going on. What light was shed on that through those cultural experiences that you had and learning about the Aboriginal culture? What answers did you gain through their perspective and their way of looking at and experiencing spirituality? Did you get some answers around that?
Well, with working with them, the first time I went out there, I was put to a test. And they had a young fellow who had been complaining he'd injured his hip. He's 14 years old, and he was talking to the other men. And this is where because I'm an observer, and I really like taking in and looking at what's going on around me. And I listened to the men responding to him when he talked about how it had been painful, he'd been crying and all the rest of it. All the men treated him with the deepest respect all the way through that conversation. And so I realized just the way they were treating, that was different to what you would find if you go down the pub or, football fields and things like that. And I was actually put to a test. The senior elder turned to the young fella and pointed at me and he said, "He's a healer, he'll fix you." Now we're out in the bush. I've got no table, no oils, no massage or facility or anything else. I took him aside and I was just manipulating his leg a little bit and having a chat with him. 10, 15 minutes later, he's kicking a football with that foot, with that leg. And I realized that it wasn't me who fixed him. When the elder said to him, who he had great respect for, said to him that I'm a healer and I'd fix him, the job was done. It was already done. This is where I really started realizing that the power of the mind, but the connection to how we talk to ourselves in normal society, but also how the Indigenous side of things also looked at things as well. And I thought these two have got to come together. I've got to be able to bring that into it.
It reminds me a little bit of hypnosis where, if an authority figure utilizes the power of suggestion, it can actually have that person take those suggestions on uncritically and have the unconscious make changes necessary to change the behavior or change the experience that person's having.
That's it. Well, I watched a video many years ago, and it was a football team over in America, and there was one a gridiron player. This one guy who was really overweight, and they got him to get down on all fours. It was one of the exercises they would do. They'd had somebody else lean against them on their back against back, hold onto their shoulders over the back like that, and the person underneath would then start to crawl on their all fours. And they'd only go about 20 meters and they'd be exhausted. Well, he got this guy, they blindfolded him, got another bloke on his back and got him to start going, moving along. He kept on saying to him, only a few more steps, only a few more steps. He went the whole distance of the football field. And everybody's up there standing around just watching all of this. And that was the power of that. When you give the right suggestions to somebody and you lead them the right way and do it with ethics and everything else, what the human body and human mind can create is amazing. We limit ourselves so much. And that was the thing that I realized in these conversations and this is why I love the fact that my spiritual and material world came together, because it got me to look at things in multiple different ways, which is one of the reasons why we're having a chat. I go down through multiple paths as well.
Yes.
I love the death crawl analogy that you gave. Did you always knew that you had a spiritual awakening or a spiritual opening within you?
No, it wasn't until I went out there. It was just, things just got crazy when I started getting to people who had cancer, for instance, reversing their cancers. A guy that I knew is a Maori, came to me. We had, he was on the transplant list for new kidneys. Both, and his son had the same sort of problem. I worked with both of them. He went from 15% deficiency in his kidneys to 85% in 3 months and went off the transplant list. This stuff to me was absolutely bizarre. To tell around to think that I was a healer, that was something that was never on the table for me.
And it would be a combination of linguistic suggestions and using your hands and massaging, a combination of everything?
That's it. Everything came together. And this is when I realized that you may have done NLP, for instance, you may think that's the best thing in the world. It's really great, but there are other things you can use. So if somebody comes to me, I'm not thinking about the tools that I've got, what I'm going to do straight away. I want to find out about them. I really have to need to know what is it they really need. Then I go to my toolbox and bring out the particular remedies or therapies or whatever that I need to apply for them. Everybody's different. Even when people do my master courses, they get the same manual, but everybody gets trained differently. They're always taught to their needs, never to mine.
So I'd like to go back now to the facial recognition and how you're able to read certain aspects of someone's face and be able to know what they're feeling, what they're thinking, whether they're being truthful or not.
Hi there, this is Connor and Callum from Connect Coaching. Hope you are enjoying the Unplugged podcast. Nothing lights us up more than seeing businesses thrive, especially in uncertain times. We have 32 combined years of doing nothing but mentoring and training businesses from around the globe in order to increase their revenue and thrive in uncertain times. So what we would like to do is share with you a little bit about what we've discovered over the last 32 years.
We've created this amazing business model called the Forever Business Model, and we want to give it to you for free. All you need to do is jump down into the description below. There's a link there called Steal Our Forever Business Model. Click on the link. There's a 9-minute video that you can watch where we unpack everything you need to know to implement it in your business right away. You said at the start that it's a very simple technique and it's not hard and anybody can do it. And I find that fascinating because it sounds like there'd be a lot of information that you're paying attention to and that you're focusing on at any given time. You also mentioned that if you saw a photo from the past and you saw a photo from now, you'd be able to tell the journey they've been on. This is that in and of itself, that statement blows my mind. I think it's absolutely incredible. I want to know if there's something that, and I don't want to put you on the spot, and if we don't have enough time or you don't want to do this, it's fine. But I would love to get you to maybe explain a little bit to us about how we can read someone's face and how our listeners or our audience can read someone's face and what maybe they can pay attention to or what they can look out for. I think that they would find that unbelievable.
Excellent. Yeah, well, even if you guys don't mind as well, while I'm looking at your face, if you don't mind me telling a few things that I can see there as well, and you can tell me how well I'm doing.
I feel naked, but go for it.
Well, first of all, there's a lot of traits that we can look at. Every trait has an upside and every trait has a downside. The upside is where your strengths are. The downside is how we react when we get stressed. It was really important to me to know my downsides, and I was really open and excited to find out about those because I realized once I knew the downside of my traits, they no longer controlled me. I had dominion over them. And that meant a change in my life straight away. It told me straight away what environments not to go into. What things can I look for and make sure that they don't come and ruin my day. But if I focus on my strengths, well, at school, we focus on our weaknesses, but I focus on someone's strengths because that's where they're happier. That's where they're more productive. And so I looked at that side of it first of all. But then when I look at the personality traits, I'm only looking at what do I need at that particular moment. If both of you were coming to me and you were doing an orientation in a factory, for instance, or we're just meeting for the first time, let's look at it that way. I've just met you with me on screen here, but if I was meeting you for the very first time face to face, the first thing I know, both of you are going to stand close. You've got that affable trait, which says that you'll stand close to people, but somebody and I've got the same trait, but you might find some people who have got the more discerning trait, they need space. So if I'm meeting somebody, first of all, I need to know before they even get to me, how much space do I need to give them? And I can see that from 20, 30 feet away. Even at that further distance, I know whether they need to sit down or whether they need to be on the move. Do they find sitting uncomfortable or do they find standing uncomfortable? And I can see that in their body length as well before they even get to me, the ratio between the upper body and the length of their legs. And so I'll know that if you came to me and we're going through a factory and I was going to do an orientation, if I realize that you had the traits where you need to be on the move, I'm going to do the whole presentation walking around the factory. If you've got the trait where you need to sit, I'll take you and sit you first of all, go through everything, and then we'll do a short walk around later on. And that way, making you comfortable. First of all, as I said, with the space, knowing how much space you need, because if I invade your space, you're not going to be thinking about what I'm talking about. You're just going to be thinking how uncomfortable you are. So I know those straight away. But I also know both of you are analytical. You need all the information before you make a decision. In Connor's case, he needs all the detail. Whether he uses it or not, he just needs to know it's there. In your case, Callum, you find the errors in everything. If there's a document and things are misspelt, spacing's out of place, you're going to find that. If you're looking at a picture on the wall and 3 foot wide and it's out by just a millimeter or whatever, you're going to pick that up as well. So I know with you, Callum, I'm going to have to make sure that I've got all the information there. It's all correct, which is great because I've got these all vertical lines here in the forward, which I think I'll be exactly right. So I'll prepare it that way. You'll accept it. And at the same time with Connor, I'll make sure all the details in there as well. But I know that if I just tried to give you the overview, both of you are just going to stop me and go, well, tell me more about this. You want to go deeper down that. And so if I was somebody who focuses on the big picture, just the overview of it, the least amount of information, because I want to get the whole picture in front of me, I would say to you, look, there is a lot of information here. I know you're going to have a lot of questions, but so I don't forget, I want to make sure I've got all of this covered. So I'm going to put it all out on the table, and then we'll go back and we'll answer all the questions you've got along that. In your case, if you went up to somebody who is more just the big picture and you start talking to them in the way they want to be spoken to, the end result is they're going to switch off. You'll talk yourself into the sale and you'll keep talking yourself out of the sale. So if you can recognize that, you can say to them, look, I know that there's a lot of information here, and I know that you just want the big pictures. I'm going to just give you the overview first of all. Then you ask the questions that you want to ask. But just in case there's something there that you haven't asked that I think you need to know, is it all right if I share that with you then? So now the person knows that you're going to be talking with them, not at them. And so you had that conversation, lay it out. You say, right, what are your questions? I'll ask the questions that they want to ask. You can then work out what they need to know in addition. And that's when you can say to them, look, well, as I said before, there might be something there you need to know that you didn't ask. You know, that boring stuff is, or if we go through that now. I usually get a giggle from the person, but we've had that conversation. And no matter if I can read the other person and speak to them the way that they need to be spoken to, no matter what length of time that takes, it'll be the time that they need to be able to make a decision.
Yeah. Cool.
But as I said, every trade's got an up trade and every trade's got a downside. Now, with Callum, as I said, you've got that critical perception, find the errors in things. I've got the same trait. It's great when it comes to things that are black and white, pictures on walls. You know, when I was a carpenter, I could look at something and know whether it was square or whatever without even putting a square on it to test it.
Yeah.
But it can be a downfall in relationships. And that's where we can imagine something's going on, but because you're also aesthetic appreciation, but all three of us are, when we've got something on our mind, we withdraw to our cave, leave us alone. We're going to fix this on our own. And if somebody wants to know what's going on, we take that as nagging. As they're asking us like this, what's going on? We're pulling away to our cave. So in that situation, if your partner or the people you're working with have what I call a dramatic appreciation, where they need to express themselves, they need to know stuff. And any one of us, we're working with the aesthetic side of things, you know, something we're working on, they're going to want to know what's going on, and that's going to cause us to withdraw. But if they know, they would turn around and say, right, is this guy, I can see that something's on your mind. It's got anything to do with me? No, it hasn't. Is there anything I can do to help you? No, there's not. Okay, in that case, I'm going to leave you alone, Callum, to go and work on what it is, because I know that you need to focus on it. But when you get to that point, can you come back and tell me when you've got it sorted? Because I care. I want to know what's happened. I want to know that you're okay. So now you know that you've been left alone. You can imagine now that if you've got a partner who really wants to know all the time, if they knew how to ask that question, that would take pressure off you, and that would then make the relationship even better again. So this is how talking to the traits improves relationships, not only just getting information across the way you need to get it across, but it creates relationships. So couples being able to, because what traits we have at that time when somebody first meets us and we get together, it's because of the upside of our traits that they enjoy. Like somebody who's got that dramatic appreciation is very expressive. They're the life of the party. They're fun to be around. But when they do stress, they get excited about that. And if we got the aesthetic appreciation, we pull away. So the end result, if we know that, because people will say, oh, my partner changed. Now our perception of them changed because they haven't really changed. They were expressive before, and that's what we focused on because we like the upside of the traits. But now we got used to it. Now we're noticing the other side.
Right.
So once we know how to talk to that trait, marriage counseling 101, it's done in an instant. Doesn't take much to turn things around because it's usually misunderstandings and lack of the right communication. Why did we get together in the first place? There was a bond, there was a connection. That doesn't disappear. It's just our awareness of it that disappears. And so you can see this is not only just in business, but in with your partner. Also, when it comes to raising your children. I've got 3 sons, and they're all from the same mother. And all of them are, well, chalk and cheese. And as I jokingly talk about, number 3, I'm still trying to figure him out, even though he's in his late 30s. And they're all different to each other. And so being able to know how to talk to each one, I can make that connection with them so they all feel that they're not being left behind, that I'm dealing with one that seems to be getting on better with one and not with the other. But if I change the way I'm talking to that second one, everything improves again. So talk to the other person, their style. So young children, we know what hobbies and sports will suit them. We know what type of school will suit them, whether it's a public school, a private school. I'm also a director on one of the Montessori primary schools on the Central Coast, completely different type of education. So that one is one that I really love. So I can look at the child and go, okay, what sort of school do you need to go to? Before they pick their final subjects, we know what careers are likely to fit their personality, where they're going to be happy. So you can now direct them in the right direction to do the right studies so that if they go to university, they'll end up using that degree. Because how many kids do we know that have done even got 2 degrees and not using either one of them? Because they realize once they got through it, this is what they wanted to do. But if we can guide them up front, then finding the right partner, knowing what we want in a partner, then looking at the facial features, be able to realize and find that partner very quickly. Then how to maintain that relationship with that partner into the future. And if we're doing all of that, we're happy in what we're doing. If we're doing the job we love to do, we're more productive, the company's making more money, we're going home happy, we're not fighting with our spouse, we're not arguing with the kids. So we reduce bullying in the workplace, we reduce domestic violence without even focusing on reducing those. We just improve the quality of life and the connections that we have in the communication. It's all pretty simple.
This is fascinating. And I love the fact that it feels like a process of responsiveness in the way that you teach it. It's not necessarily using it to change or manipulate anybody else. It's actually giving you more resources to change your approach and to change how you respond. And I find that to be a very powerful tool that you have. Is this something that you can only learn through extensive training? Or is there books that you can read about this? How are you, how is it best delivered and how is it best learnt?
Well, it all comes down to the individual. So it always comes back to the person who's looking at this. I've got a free online course, which I'll give you the link to. You can give that out to everybody. It talks about what I do, but it gives some examples and feedback from people I've worked with. But it gives a couple of traits you can go out and test for yourself. Because as the old saying, in that the proof of the pudding is in the eating. You bake it, it's not until you actually taste it, you know you've actually done a good job. And so it's the same thing here. And as I said before, the most important thing you'll ever learn is the next thing you learn after you think you know everything. So you listen to what everyone says, but you've got to go and apply it to see whether that fits you. I think it was Bruce Lee who had said that, you take everything in, you hold on to what serves you, you drop off what doesn't serve you, and you add your own flavor to it. And that's how he created his fighting style. And that's his advice to everybody else. And that's my advice to people when it comes to learning and growing. Work out what works for you. Knowing your personality is a great way to be able to get there faster in understanding that. Apply it and everything else. Listen to everybody. But there's another saying I loved from the Arabs, which was trust everybody, but lock up your camels at night. And that tells me that, yes, take it all in from people, but then confirm it and make sure that it works for you. And so then apply that. And so there's the free course, there's online courses where people can self-pace. There's what I call the first program I've got, which is a 3-step program where somebody does an online course. While they're doing that, they sent me their photographs and I've sent them an audio file back on what I'm seeing in the traits and how they can use that. They benefit, where their buttons will get pushed and other things like that. And that can be anything up to an hour in length. And then we get together and they share their screen where they show faces of people they want to improve relationships with. And I show them, go, this is your personality. This is how, with this person's personality, this is how you need to talk to them. I did that with a business coach over in Perth. And he sent me his 5 photographs. There's a particular way I want them taken. I sent him back a 45-minute audio. That was when he came back to me and told me that the leadership or the training he's doing now as a coach is leadership training with the leaders of the SAS. And before that, he was an undercover narcotics agent for 2 decades. Wow. And he said there he used skills that were up to 95% accurate. He said if they hadn't been, he wouldn't be alive today. But what I put in that audio, not only matched, but nuanced everything he learned about himself in those 2 decades. And that took me 5 minutes to do the profile, ticking it out on a chart that I use, and then 45 minutes to record the audio. And so that's how effective it is. I've got a mother who's still doing testimonial videos now for me. The last one was 13 years after I profiled her 6-year-old son. And she still tells everybody that I gave her a son back because of what they were going through at the time. And I had a commercial builder up in Queensland quoted on 5 buildings. The first one he quoted on, because they got the first one, he'd get the other 4 buildings. He quoted $2 million. The clients wouldn't go above 1.6. The deal was falling off the table. I got him to give me a look at their faces, one from their LinkedIn profile. The other one, he did a search on Google and found them. I profiled them and said, right, this is how you change the way you're speaking to them. He went and did that. He added another $160,000 to his original quote and signed him off on it.
Nice.
So if you can see the power of being able to read somebody accurately, being able to communicate with them to get those special deals, but how to also do this and have that longevity. Because that little boy, when I profiled him, he has Asperger's. School didn't want him. After schools care didn't want him. The psychologist said he needed a carer for the rest of his life. I profiled him in those days, gave a written report because I knew the mother was going to give it to the school teacher and the after schools care who didn't want him. They wanted him medicated. And she gave it to them and she was smart. She played each against the other, telling the school teachers that the after school care were doing it. And if they didn't do it, it'd fail and be on their heads. And nobody wanted to take responsibility for that. So they all put it in place. It was simple instructions. A year later, he was doing presentations in front of the class. Another year and a half later, they let the psychologist go, and with the doctor's approval, medication was off the table. And he's now living in Queensland. He's now 20, but last year when she did the testimonial when he was 19, he'd moved to Queensland, living on his own, got a girlfriend, driving a car, paying his bills and everything else. But on top of that, and this is after the psychologist said he'd need a carer for the rest of his life, he's now an assistant manager in a nightclub.
Wow.
This is why you can see why I'm so passionate about this. And it's getting this into the hands of as many people as possible, not just to use it, but to go out and teach it as well to other people.
So after that course, the one where you do the feedback with the photo, that doesn't necessarily train them to be a practitioner as such. Is there something above that?
Yeah, because as soon as the people usually do that, they now know how the traits work. They know how effective they are and how easy they are to read and assess. They know what it's like to work with me. They already know their own profile and they know how to change that and connect with other people. So usually, well, like that business coach in Perth, first thing he did as soon as he finished that was sign up for my master course. And I've got a number of different master courses because I did a lot of writing leading up to Christmas about coercive control. There was a 3-part series where the man was a victim, 3-part series where the woman was a victim. First part, how they got groomed by their partner. Second part was what they could have noticed if they'd been aware of it. And the third part was how they could have made, by applying what they'd learned, would have been able to circumvent the whole situation from day one, never gone into that situation. Then I wrote about psychopaths, sociopaths, and narcissists, the differences of them and how to recognize them, how to deal with them. I got so many people writing to me going, my God, this is what I've been through. You've just written about my life story. And I went, okay. I then started putting a new master course together, which looks at profiling that, well, the FBI used for hostage negotiations and how to use that in everyday life, in business and personal life. Body language that the military used, what they call left of bang. So before the actual event happens, using body language in a proactive way, not just reactive. So circumventing situations long before they happen. Also, a few more traits. I'm working with another profiler in Romania that look at the eye shapes that give us a good indication of whether that person is going to be cruel, conniving, or whether they're loyal or whatever, even before we have a conversation with them. So, and by the way, once we've done that, we always have to test it, because no matter how many people I've profiled, I'm always test it with somebody to make sure I got it right. Because if I don't, that's my ego. They're not showing that person respect.
Sure.
Everything I do is based on that respect. But then it just flows along from there. So with the master course, there was also how to deal and talk to narcissists and those manipulative people, how to get around that. So I've got a number of different master courses, but now building in a way they're all going to be modularized. So when somebody says to me, this is my situation, then I go, okay, you need this module, you need that module, etc. But then when I'm talking to them, the first thing I'm working is, how do they like to take information in? So I trained 3 different dentists, one in WA, one in New South Wales, one up in Queensland. They train other dentists on putting their practices together. One of them wanted to learn the traits step by step and then apply them. One of the others was looking at problems he had in his organization. So we dealt with looking at the problems of fixing those, and he learnt the traits as a follow on from that. So everybody gets taught to their learning style, not to my teaching style. It changes every time.
And if I was a trainer, is this echoey for you guys as well, or
it's sounding a little bit different to what it was before, but we can hear it. Yeah, we can hear.
All right, cool. If I was a trainer and I wanted to teach other people how to do this, is that something I could do with you as well?
Absolutely. Right at the moment, my focus is in 2 areas. One is with my online courses, getting more affiliate partners to actually share that with other people so other people get a taste for it. But my major focus is to create and train my competition. The way I look at things, we worry about competition, but the problem with that is that we hold ourselves back. We reduce our prices to try and keep up with the dropping prices of others. And it's a rapid rate to the bottom. It's a rapid race. So the end result is I want to work with other people, see how we combine and build things better. So the first thing I did when I started looking into the profiling side was search the world for some of the best profilers. Joseph Aguirre is over in Ireland. He works with a different style of face profiling, but he and I are looking at putting some programs together. There's another gentleman by Alexandru Berlusconi over in Romania, and his traits are similar to mine, but he explains them a bit differently. And so we've actually done some work together. Yeah, I've trained him in my style. He's trained me in his style. I can go and teach his style, but what I prefer to do is create courses with him, because now we bring both of us together. So as I always say, what you and somebody else bring to the table, you bring your component to it, but when you put it together, it's greater again. It's not just a sum of the 2 halves, but it's an exponential increase on the 2 halves.
Yeah.
So I really want to make sure that more people are doing what I'm doing. So I'm working with a college lecturer in Dublin, a HR professional, she's in Ireland, a HR professional in London, a psychotherapist in Sydney, a hypnotherapist in America, dentists, people who are running pharmacies, etc., to train them so they can then go and train their people. Because the way I look at it is that if it were just did some of my little courses, like There's a lot of great life coaches out there, but they're struggling because they're in the same bucket as everybody else who haven't really done a full course or anything. They haven't worked through their own stuff yet, or they're still emerging to become good coaches. And I couldn't afford that to happen to what I'm doing. I don't want to have a conversation with somebody where I've got to go into damage control when we first start to try and explain to them why this stuff is good. I want to make sure that people are hearing about it being brilliant, and therefore they want to know more about it. So I want to train other people to go out and train others. In my 70s now, as I said, I don't want to be going out and on stage and all the rest of the running around the world as I've done in the past. I want to sit back. There's more things I want to look at with neuroscience and how does that work with the facial features? How do other profiling systems, how do other techniques work together? And so bringing that together. So I want to do that research work and I want to support those people that I then train. So if somebody does a master course, then what I'll do is the next thing, if they want to go to the next step, is to look at what they do, bring it together with what I do, create a course that they go out and deliver. And while they're delivering it, I'll be advertising them to the world. Because we know if I talk about me or anybody talks about themselves, only a small number of people listen. But if you're talking about somebody else, more people listen. That's why when we say in networking, you need to have people talking about you. You need to have them talking about you the right way. This is why advocacy works really brilliantly when you've created those relationships. So by doing this and training others and then getting them out to the world, more people are going to listen to what I'm doing. They'll hear that I've actually supported those people in that particular industry, and all the other industries say, well, how can I be part of this? So my supporting them, that's my advertising campaign to get more people to come in and want to learn what I'm doing.
Got it. Okay,
And
cool.
that way I'm going wide, but also deep at the same time.
These skills can be used in every industry. Offline, before we actually started the podcast, you mentioned that you did some work with DC movies, or
It was Disney films.
I did.
Yeah, they hired me to go to London, and my job, this is one of the best gigs I ever had. It was when I realized later on that I could have put another zero, if not 2 zeros, on the price I charged them. It was a 10-day holiday in London to be interviewed by the world's press about the stories the face tells before you utter a single word. They were highlighting the Rogue One movie. They were highlighting the new outfits and everything else and talking about why they had the outfits they created and everything. And I just linked all of that to the expressions, the facial features, the images that people get. Because if you look at a movie and say DiCaprio when he was a young fella, you wouldn't see him as Ulysses in Troy or something like that, or a football player, because he just didn't have the build for it. So how that all worked. And so my job was to be interviewed by the world's press. They flew in 120 journalists from around the world, from Russia, Europe, and America and other places. And my job was to just explain to them the stories the face tells. Well, of course, they wanted to know how it worked. 120 journalists got profiled. They were standing in front of me. I talk about them and talk to their partners, the people that come along with them, their teams, and went, right, team, you tell me if this is what I'm seeing in this person is correct. Nailed it on all the way through. Not one person ever came back and went, no. In fact, there was so much laughing, but I picked it up in the person because a lot of people say, I'm not like that. And the people around me were going, oh, yes, you are. That was a lot of fun.
Magic. Well, this is incredible. I'm fascinated with this. I know Callum is as well. We are both very big fans of profiling, not for the purpose of any other reason, but to adopt our communication for their listening style, for their communication style. Because if you can communicate, then you can really advocate a huge amount of change in the world. And this is obviously the motivation as to why we do what we do. So if anyone would like to get in contact with you, Alan, what website? If I just Googled you, Alan Stevens.
.com.au is the website. So as you can see my name on the screen there, it's ALAN for Alan and STEVENS for Stevens and .com.au. A lot of people will say to me, forget the Alan wrong. And I say, well, look, it's only one L. My family wasn't rich enough to purchase two. So I've just got the ALAN. And they can find me there. They'll find the blogs. They'll find the courses and everything else there. They'll find the programs I'm running. But they'll also find they can contact me through the contact form there as well.
And if there's a trainer who teaches something, could be Reiki, could be NLP, could be anything, and they would like to add is it facial recognition certification? What's the name of it?
Well, it's facial recognition, but it's also if they just want to be able to read people better and have better relationships, better communication, and want to share that with other people, I would love to have a chat with them.
Nice one.
Because I'm mainly looking for the people, their attitude has got to be that their focus is on their clients, and by looking after their clients, they get paid well. If they're just focusing on manipulating people, well, I won't train them at all.
Yeah.
If they're focusing on improving their sales and making more money, yeah, I'll train them. But if I had only a certain amount of time and two people walk through the door and one wants to use this just to increase their sales, the other one wants to go and teach other people, that second person is the one I'm going to train. Because as I said, it's leaving this legacy before I leave the planet, making sure there's plenty of other people doing it and doing it right.
Beautiful.
Before you leave the podcast, is there one more thing that you could teach our audience through our faces again? Because I really loved that before. It was quite fun.
Right. Well, one of the things to look at, regardless of the shape of the eyebrows, when you're looking straight at somebody and you imagine a vertical line through the pupil. So we're looking at the gap above the upper eyelid and the eyelash itself. You look at the size of the iris and would that fit into the gap above? If you look at all of us three, there's no real space there for it. There is when you put your eyes up like that, but and this is one of the reasons, because the different eye shapes, yours go up and curve a bit, whereas Callum's are very much straight to sort of angling down as they go out. Mine are pretty much straight across and then they curve down at the end. So if you get that one point, if there's a large gap, that person just wants space. Don't invade it. Step back from them. If you have got that particular trait where you got the large gap, you got someone like Connor, Callum, or myself coming up to you, as long as you're not super tall, we're all going to stand close to you. That's just naturally where we feel comfortable. If they do step in and somebody is too close to you, just angle your body slightly sideways. You haven't moved away from them, so they won't think something's going on, but you'll have an escape route in front of you. And where I've said to both of you are more analytical, none of us, when you look at us, we've all got this little fold of skin where the eyelash goes underneath. We want all the information because we pull our eyelids down when we're thinking all the time and we close that space up. And so now we've got the eyelash that goes underneath that fold of skin. So we're analytical. Someone who's got that totally exposed where there is no fold of skin there, that's just somebody that's like this, just taking the open, what's going on around, the least amount of information. So there's two traits that they can actually play with straight away.
You're a good man, Alan. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here. And I think there's more that we can do to collaborate in the future and maybe do a masterclass with our community, because there's a lot of people in there that would just eat this stuff up for breakfast. And most of them are trainers, so they would be more than willing to teach it to others. So
well, that would be brilliant. Just tell me when and I'll be there.
Excellent.
Magic.
We're just up the road from you too, so it might be nice to catch up sometime. Yeah.
Excellent. So whereabouts are you?
I'm in Avoca Beach. Connor's on the south coast of New South Wales, down Bateman's Bay, but we, often meet each other in Sydney. And
well, as I said before, I'm also, besides the business, I run a group called the Campfire Project, which is my passion project, helping men and women from around the world share their stories. I'm also a director on the Business of Smiles, which is a charity that works with mental health that came out of that. But I do spend a lot of time on the Central Coast, being a director of the Montessori Primary School down there at Baddo Bay. So plenty of places we can get together.
Great, mate. Well, keep in touch. Connor, any last words?
Look, it's been fascinating. I think I've been a student today, learning and understanding the depth of what you have to and what you've created in the world. When you think of facial profiling, I can hear an echo. With facial profiling, I only think sort of, okay, someone smiles this way, that means this. But now I've learned, I think you mentioned it, it's an inch wide and a mile deep of knowledge that you can use in every facet of life, be it personal, be it empowering people, be it business, be it helping someone to live in themselves more. You can utilize it everywhere, and it's an excellent tool to have in your toolkit for any.
Well, that's right. Well, if I teach somebody because they want it for their business, part of the process is in profiling their family and close friends and everything else. And the number of times people come back to me and say, it's doing exactly what I wanted for my business, but I'm also doing it in my personal life. And actually, it's improved the relationship with my spouse or my kids or whatever. So use it one place, learn it for one spot, you'll use it everywhere.
With the kids, how little can you do it to? Because obviously the expressions change over time.
Well, the facial features, there's two. When it comes to personalities, you've got your what we call the nurture traits and the nature traits. The nature traits were passed down from the parents. The nurture traits are the ones we create in response to our environment. So even a newborn, with the traits that were passed from their parents, I can pick up things like whether they have a music trait. I've got a pretty good idea of what they're going to be like. Can they sit still as they're growing up, etc. I remember going to an event once. The lady I knew brought her granddaughter up to me. She was 6 months old. I profiled her. And each year, because I was giving away a prize at the local awards up in the Hunter Valley, and she turned up every time when I was doing it. And she came up and she said, what you told me my granddaughter would be doing next year. She said, it's done that. So each year, 4 years in a row, she kept on coming back to me and saying, what you've told me all the way through has been, the granddaughter had been doing it. So from the toddler, things like your critical perception, Callum, I saw in my youngest grandson when he was born, and I saw him 3 days after he was born. I also saw that he had a music trait, so I knew that they could use music to control his emotions. But when I looked at him, I started laughing, and my son said, what's wrong? I said, no, he's a gorgeous kid. I said, don't worry. He's going to take him down to the cafes and that. So the waitresses and they just mill around him. I said, but he's got this critical perception. The reason I'm laughing is that I raised you 3 boys on my own as you were growing up. He finds the errors in everything. I'm going to help him do that, and you're the target. It's payback.
That's great. That's great. Thanks for finishing on that one, Alan, and we look forward to catching up again soon.
Thank you very much.
Alan. Thank you for being here.
Cheers.
Hi there, this is Connor and Callum from Connect Coaching. Hope you are enjoying the Unplugged podcast. Nothing lights us up more than seeing businesses thrive, especially in uncertain times. We have 32 combined years of doing nothing but mentoring and training businesses from around the globe in order to increase their revenue and thrive in uncertain times. So what we would like to do is share with you a little bit about what we've discovered over the last 32 years.
We've created this amazing business model called the Forever Business Model, and we want to give it to you for free. All you need to do is jump down into the description below. There's a link there called Steal Our Forever Business Model. Click on the link. There's a 9-minute video that you can watch where we unpack everything you need to know to implement it in your business right away.